Okay, this is kind of a continuation from the last video. This is a comment left on the Remember This Guy Part 2, as was the Brian's page text that Clean World had posted that I commented on in the last video. Raffish responded to some comments I had made in that video. And I spoke more, something in that video about certain things also that separate mainstream versus commercial scenes. One of them, again, there's some things about realism and purpose. And I'm going to speak more about that in this video. I didn't really talk about that in the last one. You see, when you have good kidnapping scenes, these really good DID scenes, when you look at, again, we look at Alicia Cuthbert's 24 scene. We use her first one as an example, which is the best one, the one in the van. You don't see, when you have a realistic, real scene in a real production, which is what people like the most, you don't see ridiculous bondage. And you had in that scene, you had these two guys with a full roll of tape, and when it shows her, her body isn't covered in tape. You don't see every single joint in her body taped up. You don't see 25 pieces of tape on her mouth, like that shitty picture mainstream DID reviews has as his avatar, which he shouldn't have, because that's obviously not a mainstream scene and he's false advertising. But anyway, you don't see that on Alicia in that scene. And there's a reason why. Because that would be unrealistic and ridiculous. It would be absurd. Not to mention look like shit. And we all know this. And people who really appreciate these scenes know that. And wouldn't want to see that. You don't see shit like that in real mainstream productions. You see that nasty shit in commercial fetish videos, which are not really DID productions. They're just about humiliation and excess. So I'm going to read his comment here to what I said. How utterly ridiculous. You're actually trying to make the case that a woman who has her knees and her elbows tied isn't a proper damsel in distress, but a slut who likes being tied up. Well, in a commercial setting, for those videos, yes, that would be the point of having her tied up like that it was just a trashy video. Let's keep going. That's both misogynistic and absurd, whatever. If you go to Brian's DID scene database and search on knees, you get 303 hits. For elbows, 97 hits. Now, a small number of these entries use the words in context other than describing them as bound, but we're still talking about hundreds of undisputably mainstream and TV and movie DID scenes, some of them quite famous in DID circles, featuring women with bound knees or elbows. Scenes, it must be said, and then he tries taking a cheap shot at me, must be said with production values and viewership numbers that are orders of magnitude greater than yours will ever be. And Brian's database isn't half of it, blah, 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 blah. It might not be your taste, but that's all it is, your taste. Not the taste or all or even most of your fans, I'd be willing to wager. Really? Ranting about it as though it's some sort of objective measure of production DID bonus. Okay, so let's go back through this here. If you search knees in Brian's page database, you get 303 hits. Again, most of those knees are probably have to do with people actually being on their, being forced down to their knees on the ground, hitting the knees. Who knows? There could be a lot of things that have to do with that. For elbows, 97 hits. So we're going to go ahead and use elbows as probably more of a realistic number for this than the knees, because there's so many other things that could happen with somebody's knees in a production. So that wouldn't be accurate. We're going to use the 90. Let's go in the middle. Let's go to 150. We'll say 150 hits for knees and elbows, 150 times in Brian's page database for involving some form of restraint on them. A lot of them are going to be involving chairs, probably, so that's an exception. You can't, if someone's bound to a chair, sometimes there are other joints get involved. So that can't really be used. So you got 150. We'll still say 150. There's probably tens of thousands of scenes in that database. So out of tens of thousands, only 150 involve knees and elbows, and you're going to make the case that tying up someone's knees and elbows is a regular and reasonable thing that would happen in most scenes, that that's something that's totally normal? Okay, let's say that's true. Well, I'm going to go to the Kidnapper's Corner playlist. Now, I don't have tens of thousands of scenes here, but I do have over 200 episodes of my show now. That's a lot of different scenes from a long time period involving a lot of different themes, a lot of different people. So let's take a good look. I've already done this, actually. I've already taken a good long look at this. I went through the whole goddamn playlist, and it wasn't until I got to episode 199 that I found a woman whose elbows and knees were tied together. Okay, and let's take a look at what scene that is. It's the Dragnet opening scene. A scene, mind you, which was normally edited out of television. And I think it was edited out of television for a reason, because it's basically a commercial fetish video. Big shock, right? Yeah. It's really pushing the line, and I mentioned that in the video. The guy was a pervert, the serial killer who was doing it, and I understand why they did it and all. And whatever, it's no problem. But to use that scene as an example of a true mainstream production, that would really be pushing it, since they wouldn't even let it on TV a lot. And so I kept looking. Well, any other scenes that have elbows and knees tied? Well, actually, a scene I just did last week, or a week before, I don't know when I'm uploading this. Carrie Warner's scene in The Undertaker's Wedding. Now, you may not even have noticed that her elbows and knees were bound. I didn't the first several times I even saw it. This is this goofy scene where Adrian Brody has bound her up with bed sheets. It's an extremely comical, goofy movie with a goofy scene that most people wouldn't even see that. And it's just done for over the top, because he's using bed sheets and he thought they might rip or something. Again, this is not your typical scene. Neither one of these are typical scenes. To say that, so let's just cut the bullshit, Raffish. Yes, scenes that involve women's elbows and knees tied together in a not goofy fashion like Undertaker's Wedding. Yes, those are smut scenes. You would never ever in a real production, in a real scenario, tie someone's elbows and knees together. You'd never fucking do it. None of these scenes, I mean, it pisses me off. You can't tell I'm getting upset, because I don't like these people trying to step on my fucking territory with the things I create and do with this commercial smut shit and trying to claim it's fucking damsel in distress work. It's not. It's just commercial fetish work. And stop trying to write it off as something else. There are not hundreds of scenes that are popular in real DID circles that involve elbows and knees tied up. That's horseshit, buddy. Because if there were, they'd be in this playlist. All these great scenes, and I've covered some of the best ones of all time. I did that earlier on in the show, and now I continue to cover good scenes. And you don't see people's elbows and knees tied up. You just don't see it. First of all, it looks like shit. Second of all, it's overkill, unnecessary. You can't hit anyone. You can't do, if your hands are tied behind your back, you can't do anything with your fucking elbows. Everyone knows that. So why would you tie them up? You wouldn't. It's bullshit. You know, so stop trying to run this crap. You know, you're not going to win this one on me, buddy. Okay? So, yeah. Oh, wait, there is one other scene. There is one other scene where knees were tied. I'm not sure if elbows were, but I'm not even going to bother. Stephanie Scott in IT, when Stephanie and Anna are tied up on the couch. For some reason, Anna's ankles aren't bound, but Stephanie's ankles and knees are bound. And when you see that, it doesn't look right. It was obviously done so that Anna could get up and run, whereas Stephanie is stuck on the couch. But something about it, it doesn't look. It really doesn't look very good. I don't know. Other than that, I don't know why they wouldn't do that otherwise. If the one character wasn't gonna run, that never would have happened. It would have looked much better had her knees not been tied with those ties. It looked sloppy, but yeah. Oh, so there is that other time. There is that one, and obviously, again, that was done so one of the characters couldn't run and one of them could. So just you're not winning this one, dude. When you got tens of thousands of scenes, and I got a couple hundred here of some of the greatest scenes ever, and there's like 3 that involve someone's knees or elbows bound together. There's like 3 out of a couple hundred that involve that, and I covered the reasons why. No, you're not winning this one, dude. So yeah, none of my. And again, if you go to DeviantArt and you go into all these DID photos and stories, all of their elbows and knees are tied up, and it's just an overtop, overkill, bondage smut shit. So you'll never see any of that on my original work, whether it's live action, and again, you didn't even mention the sloppy ass tape gags. The 25-layer, 3-layer, the 3-layer tape gag that looks like shit that's in all these commercial videos. Again, something you'll never see in any of my productions, digital or live. You never see any of that, and that's one of the reasons why people love them so much, is because they look real. They don't look shitty. They don't look trashy. Yeah. So that's more of the difference between mainstream and commercial scenes. And yeah, those are really the main things. If you load a scene up and you see the woman's elbows and knees are tied together, you can pretty much know right there that it's a commercial video for the most part when you see that. That's probably one of the biggest, that and the multi-layer tape, that's probably the biggest red flag visually that separates a good production and a shit one. Those 3 things. Again, also ridiculous hog ties. The over-the-top circus contortion hog ties, that would be another one. Real hog ties like One False Move and Hasselhoff's and Baywatch. I think those are the only 2. Real hog ties and real commercial, real mainstream productions are hard to find. Good quality, realistic, but not absurd-looking hog ties. If there's anything in a production where it looks like there's professional rope work, it's not a real mainstream production, because nobody doing that would know how to do professional rope work. So, yeah. Again, there's just a few more things there. So that's what separates these from the trash. I thought I'd get that out there and clarify that for everyone who seems to be questioning that. So, yeah. And I don't know what I would be insecure about. The people who are insecure are the ones who yell "guy alert." Those are the ones who are insecure. The ones who are too scared to pop a boner when a guy is tied up in a scene. Yeah, those are the insecure ones. Not me calling out shit. So, thanks for your contribution, Raffish. If you'd like a free gift, send me a message and claim it. It's a real DID production. It isn't a commercial production, so you may not enjoy it, but it's up to you. Thanks.